I wasn't even supposed to be here, to be honest. Matt Leckie got injured and I was a late call-up. Got the voodoo doll out and maybe injured Leckie. Nah, kidding. Sorry, mate. But it feels good and probably a good way to silence some of the keyboard warriors as well. Feels good.
So Christian, I love that line from Mitch Duke. He was clearly straight away, he's like, oh, should I really said the kind of line about the voodoo doll. And obviously, Matt Leckie is probably going through a tough time at the moment. But for him individually, the story of not even being selected in the squad, having about 5 hours, I think it was, to get himself ready and hop on a plane. He was saying that the signs or whatever in his room still said, welcome Matt Leckie, when he arrived into the camp. And, he wasn't even supposed to be there and ends up starting the second game. And then the assist for Connor Metcalf for his equaliser, and then to put Australia ahead later on in the game. It's quite an amazing story.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just super happy for him to have that moment to seal qualification. That must be a special feeling, right? The same feeling that Aziz Beige had in that last-minute winner against Japan, right? It's just one of those indescribable feelings that you just can't explain, right? It's just going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And Duke's already had a couple of moments, right? In the World Cup, he already scored the winner against Tunisia, got Australia 3 points. So he's sort of been in this position before, but look, he has copped a bit of criticism in the past. That's, it's pretty clear. And it's, look, for me, there is sort of some substance to that criticism, given his lack of goals, his scoring ability. That's sort of been the main criticism, right? It's like Australia just don't have a number 9, a true proper out and out number 9 who can score those goals, who we can rely upon, right? As someone who can, finish off those chances that, once we get into that final third, there's someone to bury those, right? We just don't have that player. And unfortunately, at times, Duke, as well as Taggart, has been a scapegoat of that, right? But I think what you can't criticise about Duke is just his work ethic, right? I think if there's one person who embodies that, fighting spirit, you'd have to say it's Mitch Duke, right? And we saw that even at the last World Cup under Graham Arnold, just super impressive, just absolute workhorse. And you need players like that, right, at these major tournaments, because let's face it, Australia aren't, up the top echelon of teams, right? We're not expected to play the pretty football or, the attacking glaring football that, the likes of a Brazil, Argentina or whatever, Spain are going to produce, right? We're just not that type of country yet. So you need players like that who are willing to work for the team, sacrifice, put your body on the line, and that's something that you can't take away from him, right? It's just a shame that in terms of the goals and the productivity, the output, it's just at times it's inconsistent and it's not there. And that criticism is valid. I'll give them that. But those keyboard warriors out there, I think this is a moment to sort of reflect and say, look, he's sort of he's done well to this point to I guess prove himself that I guess he belongs there. It's just, can he just score a few more goals to really stamp his authority and give Popovic no other choice but to start him now.
There's been a lot of conversation probably since the beginning of this qualifying phase and over the last 6 months of what the kind of identity of an Australian football team is, and broadly what should the identity of Australian football be in terms of a development sense, and obviously with the A-League and the junior national teams. And one thing that we talked about probably a couple of months ago now is that the different countries around the world is often a societal impact, and different countries, Jacob, have their different kind of influences on how they play football. And one trait that is not uniquely Australian, but definitely embedded into the fibre of who we are is that work ethic and, not quitting and never saying die. And Mitch Duke probably, embodies those kind of attributes more than most when it comes to Australian football. And I know people usually mean it as a compliment, and Christian, I'm sure you did when you said it then about his work rate, right? And, obviously he works extremely hard for the team. But that's also not to say that he has a lot of other qualities that are valuable to the team. And you look at specifically that kind of glancing header that's almost coming, his trademark now. It's the one he scored against Tunisia, the little kind of just slightly deflected angle coming across him. It's the same as the goal he scored here against Saudi Arabia. He's got that kind of technique about him as well. And he's not, as you say, Christian, he's not that guy who's going to score, every other game and really load on the goals. But since Tim Cahill, Australia has not had anyone like that, and that debate's going to go on and on and on. But Mitch Duke does have the ability to score goals and has the skill to do so as well, Jacob.
Yeah, and I think it was good to see him get that one in this game. Like you said, it's almost sort of a trademark goal for him now, those headers. But yeah, it just goes to show the impact that he can have when he's in there. And there's obviously a lot of criticism of him, and there has been across social media for a long while now. But I think, to be able to come in and have a game like that, and the assist, in my opinion, is even better than the goal that he scored. Like that pass was absolutely tremendous, and you just think that's your number 9 that's doing that, which I think is always a really promising sign. If you've got your starting striker is able to pull that off, it just opens the game up so much more. And his physicality, obviously that's something that I think a lot of teams are sort of starting to catch on now, is that Australian teams are very physical and they will win aerial battles when they get them. They're very good from set pieces, that sort of stuff. So obviously there's still a few teams to catch on that like to seem to give Australia a lot of free kicks and a lot of corners and things, but I think from what I've read online, a lot of people now starting to catch on and go, we've almost got to be careful of Australia moving forwards, because they're actually a really good side that, like Christian was saying, it's not necessarily the prettiest football, but it's really effective, especially in tournaments like a World Cup or in qualification periods where every game matters. It's that sort of football that can come off, and like you said, Lockie, that grit, that determination, it's almost sort of embedded in Australian sporting culture. But especially with football, I think it comes from the fact that, historically football's always had to fight in this country. And I think that's something that still sort of finds its way even into the grassroots level now of, it's a case of these people, are trying to legitimize the sport that they play. They're going to constantly be on an uphill fight to get to the level that these guys are playing at. And obviously there's a few of them that, moved over to Europe when they were very young and haven't really experienced much else. But for a lot of these guys, they're A-League products. They've come through the system here in Australia. They know the fight that they've had to have, and so they're able to then give that on the pitch for their country when it matters. I think that's kind of the reason why we keep seeing these sort of performances, and that's why we're always talking about it. I think it's just ingrained in football here in this country. And I think that's a great thing, right? It's much better to have that and have that fight and know that it's there than to have a team that sort of almost limps and just rolls over and dies at times when things aren't going their way. Again, it's not pretty football, but if it gets the results, you can't complain too much.
Yeah, and another thing that Australia is getting a reputation for is being a team that is very hard to beat. And that goes down to a lot of things, but of course their goalkeeper has played a big contribution as well. And here's what a clearly very emotional Matty Ryan had to say after this game.
It'd be nice if I could work out how to sort of freeze time, the journey that we obviously went on to get here, I'm just so proud of everyone, the effort, not only the boys on the pitch, the boys that, unfortunately aren't part of this squad that have been along the journey, the staff, the background staff, Vinny, the chef, Dom, the kitman, Josh, the kitman, media, personnel, everyone that's been part of the journey. Big thank you for all their efforts.
This was such a big game for him, Jacob. He's got his 100th cap. It's the game where Australia officially locked their ticket into a next World Cup and qualify, where, depending on how competition plays out with the likes of Joe Gauchi, he could become the number 1 cap Socceroo at that tournament, which would be something very special as well. He obviously saved the penalty late on with that strong hand. There's a good history of Australian goalkeepers saving penalties to send Australia to a World Cup as well, and he joins those ranks now. And it's just such a special moment. But, being able to take that in and then straight away he's thinking about all the other people that, contributed to this journey, and not just the players that were on the pitch with him, but those that, partook in other squads that weren't here in this final moment, and the chefs and the media people and the kit guys as well. How your captain speaks about your country is a big indicator to the culture, and it seems that they've got quite a unified group.
Oh, for sure. And it's kind of interesting, contrasting that to Mitch Duke there, where Duke's all super excited and pumped up and full of energy, and then Matty Ryan's, very emotional. And I think it goes to show that, there's a lot of, there's obviously a shared mentality of wanting to win and wanting to get to the World Cup and performing well and things like that. But each individual, is still able to process things on their own. I think that just shows that there's, just a really good connection within the group, that players are just able to do that and, it not impact themselves or their performances or anything like that. And another precursor to this sort of emotion from Matty Ryan is that, his club career is up in the clouds at the moment. By all accounts, he's on his way out at Lens, and he wants to stay, but it doesn't seem like that's the case with the club shopping around for other goalkeepers. So, there's questions over that. Like he said, obviously gets 100 caps, saves a penalty, could become the most capped Socceroo of all time. Like, it's just, there's clearly a lot going on there for him. And I think it's awesome to see that. And like you said, when you've got your captain speaking like that and acknowledging everybody that's been part of the journey, I think it goes to show that the mentality within the squad is spot on, that everybody is together on this. And it's when somebody is able to deflect almost, right? He's just had an incredible game, but it's not about him in that moment. It's about everybody else. It's about the team. Like he said, I think that's a fantastic sign. And, it's something that hopefully they can continue to hold on to, because we saw it at the last World Cup, right? When that squad, really came together and knew, hang on, we can do this. We can fight. We can get out of the group. We can make the knockout stages. That's when they came together. They got those performances done. They got the results they needed, and they made it out. And I think we're kind of seeing a similar mentality here in this playing group. Obviously, there's quite a few holdovers from the last World Cup, so perhaps that helps, that little bit of experience and knowing, like, okay, the qualification is done. We've made it. We know what we can do now. I think that's a dangerous sign for other teams, right, to come across. I don't think you can write Australia off like potentially in the past, right? This is a strong squad with a good mentality, and I think it's a really good sign.
That kind of mentality, Christian, was really made famous during the qualification for the 2022 World Cup. During that COVID era, a lot of players had to make a lot of sacrifices. They were often away from their families for large periods on end. Aaron Moy famously gave up a lot of money from his salary over in China because of their, really, really strict COVID rules, and just said he's not going back because he had to be ready for the Socceroos. And the journey that they had to go through, I believe that was the most games played in terms of a qualifying journey for a Men's World Cup as well. So that experience really brought them together. And while it might have felt like that had kind of drifted away a little bit, particularly in the early phases of this qualifying, it seems to have been reinvigorated a little bit in the last couple of windows. Yeah,
and I think this squad can take a lot of factors from that previous World Cup qualifying campaign, to bring into this cycle, right? There's obviously a core group of players there that are obviously part of that squad who experienced those lows of having to travel or stay over in Qatar or the Middle East or wherever they played for those qualifying games, and to be so much time away from home, yet it just gave them so much time to bond together as a team, right? And I think you saw that in Qatar, right? That was one of the reasons why Australia did so well. They were just on the same page, they were fighting for each other, just that team chemistry was there, right? So you just hope that translates into this World Cup cycle next year for the 2026 World Cup. And look, I think Popovic has sort of done well to carry what Graham Arnold has sort of left behind, right? I think we all sort of knew that Arnold's tenure was sort of coming to an end, and you saw that in those first couple of qualifying matches, right, where the team wasn't sort of really buying into what he was saying anymore, and Arnold knew that, he realised that, and took a step aside and handed the reins over to the next man. And you sort of have to give credit as well to Arnold. I think we've said it a couple of times already, but he could have easily stayed on, right? It wasn't the FA's decision to move him on. Arnold could have just been a bit stubborn and say, oh no, I'm going to be the man to turn this around, and we could have been in a much dire position, right? Whereas he's sort of done the responsible thing. He's put the team first, his country first, as he's always done, and he's obviously in hindsight made the right decision, right? So you got to give a lot of credit to him, and I think Popovic, the work he's done over the past few months to turn the ship around, which it isn't easy. It's not club football where you get your players in, week out. And for Popovic, it's a new experience, right? First time coaching a national team. It must have been very foreign to him as well. So to be able to adapt as well as he has, it's a real credit to him, and hopefully, like I've said before, it gives us a lot of confidence now heading into this World Cup.
On Graham Arnold, that is another thing that Matt Ryan actually said after I cut that clip off, was, about him, and he really did pay credit to everyone involved in the process, and Graham Arnold for the whole first group as well. Getting them through that was part of that as well. Speaking of Tony Popovic, here's what he had to say, not just about the game, but looking forward with one eye, well, firmly two eyes now on the World Cup.
Yeah, very, very satisfying right now. I'm sure it'll sink in as the days go by. It's been a very intense period since I've joined, and I've loved it so far. And we've done the first part, qualifying automatically, and now the next part is to be bigger and better for the World Cup. So enjoy a few days, and proud of all the staff and players. We've built a good foundation now, and we want to really get better, kick on, and try and do something special at the World Cup.
Try and do something special at the World Cup, Christian. I know it's easy to say. Ange Postecoglou was quoted as, going to the World Cup thinking he could win it. We're always going to want to have those ambitions. Johnny Warren has always said we shouldn't just be trying to target qualifying for the World Cup, but he said we should be trying to win it as well. And obviously it's easy to say you have those ambitions, but for a squad that is as motivated, I know, again, it's so easy to say, but do something special. We've qualified for the round of 16 before. If we want to get that far, we're going to have to win a knockout game, because it's going to be the round of 32 this time in a 48-team World Cup. Obviously, I think the kind of shifting goalposts of this expanding tournament means that getting out of the groups should firmly be the goal. Some third-place teams will get to do that. And then it's knockout football. And we know from our experiences with all these tournaments, and anything can happen in 90 or 120 minutes plus. And just given the mentality around this group, I'm a firm believer that in international football, that kind of man motivation and the unity of a squad can often go beyond tactics. If you can get the management of a group of people right in those key moments, it can take you very far. And I have a lot of faith personally that Tony Popovic is a man that can do that for the Socceroos.
Yeah, I was literally going to mention the Ange quote, because as soon as Popper said that, my mind instantly went to that quote that he said at the 2014 World Cup, where he said, "We're not here to just make up the numbers, we're here to actually win it." And people laughed at him then and said, "Oh, what are you saying?" And to be fair, we actually lost every game, and we still won a couple of goals to finish bottom of the group, which wasn't a great look on Ange. So that, he's known for his cold quotes at Tottenham, but that certainly wasn't one of his best quotes, Ange. But look, I think Popper, look, I'm with you, Lockie. I think he's one of those coaches who can get the best out of this group, like Graham Arnold at the last World Cup, right, where little was expected, yet, we're sort of inches to getting Argentina to extra time, right, and who knows what could have happened from there. So, again, he's one of those coaches who can set up well defensively, and you need that at these major tournaments, right, to stifle those sort of bigger nations. And look, honestly, I don't think a lot of nations will want to play Australia if they look back on the last World Cup, right? They just wouldn't want to do it. Argentina gave Australia a lot of praise. You can say, oh, they just said it because just to be kind and whatever. But I seriously think that they meant it. I thought it was a real struggle and a challenge at times for them. Yes, obviously Argentina have the quality, and that obviously shone through in the end, which is expected. But, times during that game, there were moments where Australia, there were signs that they could have done a lot of damage. The Aziz Beige run from halfway, who knows what could have happened there, the Gareth Quoll, the last minute save there from Martinez. Like, Australia is just known to spring a few surprises, right? It's just, history suggests that we just haven't quite been able to get over the line against one of these top nations, at a World Cup in these previous editions. But look, Poppers, I think, he's the right sort of candidate and the right man to lead this squad to, perhaps maybe, cause a ball over and potentially, get a couple of upsets, which would be nice to see. And as you said, it's an expanded format, right? I think the goal definitely is to get out of the group, and obviously you have to wait and see who's in our group in the first place. But look, round of 32, if we get there, again, as you mentioned, Lockie, you're going to have to win a knockout game for the first time, which can be another milestone to add, to the bucket list as well for Australia at this World Cup. So, a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to. But all in all, I think the squad really is buying into what Popovic is trying to implement here in this squad.
After that little clip I played, the question was asked about plans for the future, and Jacob, he alluded to plans that have already been made in terms of setting up some games in the lead up to the World Cup, of course. I don't think there is actually too many international windows. I know it feels like a whole year, but by the time we select the squad and you have the lead-up games to the World Cup, there's only kind of, I think, 3 or 4 windows in the middle there, and a lot of them are going to come at the end of this year, which really does make things tricky, right? And it makes these games even more important. And we're currently sitting right up the top of pot 2 in terms of the FIFA ranking. Sorry, right at the top of pot 3, and getting into pot 2 on the friendlies. Maybe that's a consideration in terms of manipulating the kind of teams of who we're playing. But I think more importantly, you're plotting a journey to probably reset your expectations of your squad, do a little bit more experimentation, bring in some of those younger players that's not in those crunch moments, and start to figure out what your squad's going to look like in the football that Tony Popovic wants to play, and probably get some different experience from teams around the world in terms of different styles of football as well.
100% agree with that last point. I think it's super important to make sure that you're coming up against opposition that they're going to test you and they're going to try different things that you haven't seen. Like this isn't like it's nothing against Asian football, but there's a lot of similarities with a lot of the way that the teams play. And I think that if you can go somewhere and find something different, because it's a World Cup, right? You're going to be facing teams from, could be any continent. They're going to have different ways of playing to what you're used to. So yeah, I think you absolutely nailed that final point. It's super important to make sure you're getting just a wealth of experience with different types of teams, and the better that they are, the better the friendly is. There's no use getting teams that a cakewalk that aren't really going to test you. Okay, maybe it might be good to bed a couple of youngsters in and get them some minutes at that level, but I think in terms of preparation for a World Cup, you really need to be making sure that you're being tested so that you know your weaknesses heading in, you know your strengths, and you know what you need to work on. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go about planning it. I think that the Matildas have done a decent job recently. We've spoken about they should be focusing on getting in some decent friendlies, and they have done with some good opposition. Brazil and Argentina, they're definitely no easy opposition. So same thing I think can be said for the Socceroos, in that whether it is again potentially arranging matches with the likes of a Japan, a Korea, and then looking abroad as well, with those European, South American sides as well. There's a little bit of history there between Australia and some South American sides. So look, I think it's really important to make sure that they're good quality friendlies. Like you said, there's really not a whole lot of time now from now until the World Cup, and not many opportunities, so it would just be wasteful to let those slip away and not utilize them properly. It would be nice to see experimentation, yes, but I think that Popovic seems pretty settled on especially the formation and the style of play that he's got, with that 5 at the back, with the 2 wing backs, inverted wingers. Like, it seems like it's pretty set as to what he wants to do. So it's about, okay, well, let's make sure that players have opportunities to play in those roles and find out what works, who works where. Do you need to make any adjustments if somebody is or isn't available, those sorts of things, and then testing that out against, like we've just said, against different styles of football, different types of teams that are going to be playing in different ways. It's a really golden opportunity now. Its qualification is locked in. There's a lot of teams that'll have aspirations of making a World Cup, especially a lot of European teams. They're still got to go through their whole qualification phase. So, Australia has a chance here to actually plan ahead, knowing that spot is secured for them. I think it would just be a waste to let it slip by and not really plan for it. But, as you said, Lockie, it seems that Popovic, he's got some plans in place already, and that they're already looking ahead to that. So, fingers crossed that it comes out, it's productive, and that the Socceroos can have another good run at the World Cup.
Can I make a couple of points just quickly? Firstly, it would be our luck to get so many easy games and still be in the group of death, so I don't think we should go down that path to get easy friendlies. And I agree that it should be a case of getting a mixture of some really competitive matches and also a bit in between where we can build a bit of confidence, right? Do a bit of everything to get that experience. And the other thing I was going to mention too, you look at that game against Japan, we were sort of lifeless, right? Especially going forward, there was really nothing, right? And that was Japan's weakened squad. I think going forward, Papa really has to consider the likes of Irankundu or Azani, someone like that who can open the game up. I'm serious, because who else is going to take the game by the scruff of the neck when you sort of need that in those big moments, right, against those top teams? If we go into that same attitude against Japan,
Yeah.
is that sort of the way forward? Like, I think we need those types of players. Popovic needs to experiment a bit more. And especially now, if they're friendlies, like, you sort of have nothing to lose, right? Give them an opportunity to see what they can do, right, in his setup. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Don't bring him along. But, if you're not going to try, that's the one thing that would disappoint me. But other than that, I think Pop has done, obviously an incredible job to get to this point and to qualify for us automatically. I just love to see players of that caliber really get more of a look in.
So 2 points on that for me. I think firstly, I think I said this last time as well, but just to reiterate, I think you really do have to look at these 2 games in particular in the context of the qualifying scenario and the need to just get those results. And secondly, I 100% agree that where the experimentation probably should come in, Jacob, I think you're right. I think the system is set, and playing that system every single game now until the World Cup is probably the most valuable thing you could do in that sense. But where the experimentation comes in is probably the players. And Iran Kunda, I'm actually, obviously he was injured for the last window, but I'm kind of happy if you're choosing not to play him, because Popper has had a look at him. He's over in Switzerland. He's back at Bayern now. Let's see what happens with him early next season. I think for the next few windows, you're looking at the likes of those A-League players that have just gone overseas, right? The Nicholas Milanovic, Adrian Segicic probably will as well. Noah Botic, who's probably going to get a transfer somewhere. Maybe an Archie Goodwin if he's fit and then also starts the season well. Like those kinds of players that maybe have been overlooked purely
they're on the
because
fringe. Yeah.
They're on the fringe. They're young. We needed to win these games again, so we're not taking those risks now. But this is a time for those players to come in and prove that they can, make that impact. I think the other name you left off that list is Ryan McGree. I think when he's fit, he is the kind of player that can be in that inverted kind of winger spot, like he did for the goal against Japan, and just kind of be able to turn his player and make his impact that way.